So the big question, did the pollsters get it right this time? We're going to talk about that next. There's been an avalanche of polls that predicted everything from a blue wave to a sea of squeaker races. So how accurate were those crystal ball forecasts? Well, joining us now, somebody who knows polls very well, Clifford Young, president of Ipsos Public Affairs, also adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. So, not just you, but how did everybody do?
I think overall we did pretty well. As a market, we, of forecasters and pollsters, we saw the House going blue to Democrats. We saw the Senate staying with Republicans, maybe them increasing the lead. Probably Democrats picking up some governorships, and that's what happened. The only caveat is it was more accentuated than we thought it was going to be. You know, the Democrats did better than we thought, slightly. And the Republicans picked up some more seats in the Senate, more so than we thought. But overall, I think we had a pretty good night.
Kind of went along with the lines as to what you talked about with us on Monday, the day before Election Day, of course. But one of the things that you do, and I want to get to some of the graphics that we have here as well, one of the things you also do in addition to predicting is you break down what we saw yesterday in your same-day polling results. What did you take away from yesterday? So
yesterday we did 39,000 interviews in the United States, and we wanted to really dive down deep and understand why people were voting, what were those key drivers, and what did we find? You know, we found that Democrats voted principally as a veto or a referendum on Trump. They also were very, very concerned about health care. On the flip side, Republicans were very concerned about immigration. We had mentioned these a few days ago, but you know, we captured the day of. Those were the key drivers of Republicans and Democrats at the election day at the polling booth.
There we see some of the graphics to back up what you were saying there. One of the questions that a lot of people had, though, is when it came to look, obviously people were voting yesterday and for members of Congress. It was a midterm election. Looking forward to 2020, anything we can take from what we saw yesterday and parlay that into 2020?
I wouldn't read too much into it. Okay. We have to be very, very careful. These midterm elections are separate beasts from the general elections. They're not necessarily, one thing's not associated with the other. We can think of 2010 with Obama, and Obama won in 2012. But that said, we did ask a question on the poll, and we asked people, should Trump be reelected? Does he deserve being reelected? 54% of the people said no. Only 39% said yes. And
that's without a not up against any particular Democratic opponent, because we don't have anybody at this point. Okay, we talked about some of the polarization in the turnout, and you mentioned as well, you feel that the House outperformed where you thought it might be?
Well, we thought it was going to be between 25 and 33. All the results still aren't in. It will probably be between the 30 and 35 seat gain. So the Democrats did slightly better than we thought they were going to. On the senatorial side, Republicans, we thought maybe they'd pick up 1 or 2. Looks like they're going to pick up 4 or 5. They outperformed on the margins, especially in Florida and Indiana as examples. But overall, the results are what we thought they were going to be. I think the key takeaway tonight is basically we live in a very polarized country. Indeed, I think it's a tale of two countries. On the one hand, in urban areas, Democrats did very well, especially in the House races. In rural states, Republicans did very well. And that's basically how the 2016 vote broke down, and probably the 2020 as well.
We talked about that earlier with some folks who represent you know, both sides of the aisle, and essentially saying, look, we are becoming more of a divided nation, and this midterm seemed to show that. Either you're going farther to the left or farther to the right. Those who ran on a more centrist platform on either side of the aisle didn't seem to do so well yesterday.
They didn't do as well. And again, once again, the results in the House and the Senate are just examples or symbols, manifestations of this polarization.
Cliff, one of the things, though, that we did see and that we are starting to see, and it especially played out yesterday for Democrats, is we know that a lot of the cities, the urban areas traditionally are blue. We were wondering if the suburban areas now, as we branch a little bit farther out of those cities, if they would start to turn more blue. And we did see that in some places yesterday, particularly here in Virginia.
Yes, that's a great point. And indeed, if the Democrats were going to pick up the House, they were going to have to do well in suburbia and exurbia. I think Virginia is a great example. The Virginia 10th, which was Comstock, which was Republican, went to Wexton, the Democrat. And most interestingly, more than that even, because we expected that, more interesting than that is the Virginia 7th, which captures some of the Richmond metro area. That went blue as well. And yes, once again, the suburbia is flipping, and long-term trends towards the Democrats.
So now that the midterm is over, for pollsters like yourself, what's the next step? What do you start looking at?
We're going to start looking at 2020. Right?
Anything jump out early?
Well, listen, a data point for all your viewers. A sitting president, this without any polls, is based upon historical data. A sitting president has better than a 50-50 chance if his or her approval ratings are better than 40%. Trump's at 45. he's in a good place.
All right. Thank you very much, Cliff Young, for breaking down the polls for us this midterm election. 7:36 right now.